I am calling the meeting to order. Can I get a second?
Secondly.
Okay,
Leo, he-
great. So I'll just start off tonight's meeting by just mentioning that I know we had originally sent out an agenda that included 3 items. Over the past few days, I wanted to make sure that folks knew that we were taking off the presentation by BRC, which is an organization that focuses on shelter services. They had previously reached out to the chair of the board and had requested to essentially present at this meeting. I have not heard from them, and so that was the only reason why they were essentially removed from our, I guess, updated agenda. And I've also recently been in contact with Danielle Jetu, who was also previously discussing having come on and potentially presenting a resolution. It was in relation to the DHS shelter that was mentioned by Ebenezer in a previous report. We haven't heard much more information, and so she's essentially requested that we're going to just hold for the time being on having a discussion on a resolution, just given those very items there. But I am definitely going to continue to reach out to Ebenezer about this. He's on vacation right now, so we'll hopefully be able to hear from him come Monday, and hopefully DHS is also sending a bit more information soon. So yeah, as soon as I hear more, of course, I will share it with the committee. And I think that in terms of the general agenda today, it's mainly just leaving us with our presentation now by our fellow community members. We have Phil Zablocki with us, Gary Altime. Correct me if I'm pronouncing your names correctly, and also Zadie Adams. So with that, I will pass it along to the 3 of you. Thank you so much again for joining us today.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Dr. Gary Altheim, the founder and executive director of Growth and Development Services. On behalf of Team GDS, and I'm really grateful to the Housing and Human Services Committee for giving us this opportunity to tell our story and update you on what has happened to our agency. I'm going to show you a brief video that was filmed nearly 2 years ago. It's in the words of the GDS youth. It explains the importance of our programs and the wrongful, unjust, and unfair eviction of our home in the New York City Fort Washington Armory. GDS was locked out, forced out of its community space in April of 2019. Currently, there's 24 years of GDS's belongings, computers, files, and memorabilia. Everything is in storage in our basement and my garage. Some of the public officials agreed to ensure that GDS would stay in the armories. DHS and other public officials agreed that they would help us get a new site for our program. Neither happened. Here's the story. See if I could share the screen. Ariel?
Are you given the option at the bottom of your screen there? Share screen?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
if you give me a thumbs up, you can let me know if it's working.
Yes, I'm seeing a white. Okay, perfect. Yep, it's up.
22 years ago, I founded Growth and Development Services, GDS, to help teenagers that are challenged by social, behavioral, emotional, and educational issues.
You walk out on the street and you can find violence, you can find any of that so easily. But to find somebody who
Learning about these topics
any of that
is that are challenged by social, behavioral.
Sorry.
22 years ago, I founded Growth and Development Services, GDS, to help teenagers that are challenged by social, behavioral, emotional, and educational issues.
you walk out on the street and you can find violence, you can find any of that so easily. But to find somebody who's there willing to help you free of charge, that's like finding an oasis in the desert.
We have a community space in Washington Heights. We actually built out raw space in the Fort Washington Armory, and we developed a license with the Department of Homeless Services, DHS.
I went through GDS as a teenager and it helped me tremendously. I had just come to live to New York City with my family and I didn't know anybody. I didn't feel supported.
We've done workshops every month for the past 15 years. That's hundreds of teens that get access to learning about these topics and these issues that they need.
Excel, be on the high side. We're on our way to the senior center, who they have dementia, and we're gonna help them out and soothe them and try to rejuvenate their soul, their mind, and body.
We created this program that actually started with Camp Excel, which is a camp to take inner city teens out of the city.
So the Armory is a 2-acre building. The fact that a 1,200-foot office space is the only space that I, as a member of the community, can actually get help, and they're being evicted, it's just ridiculous.
Just being in GDS, they helped me a lot. I had counseling every week. They helped me with my family issues. They helped me with my school problems and just assimilating the culture in New York City.
They are doing what nobody else is going out of their way to do. They're providing free services for the community, and that's something that is not only supposed to be happening in the Armory, it just isn't happening anywhere else.
New York City Department of Homeless Services has turned a blind eye to what's been going on in the building, and it has basically become a venue rental space, has become all of these spaces that are not being used by the community.
Featuring the Armory, this world-renowned event space located in the heart of Upper Manhattan offers over 250,000 square feet of production space.
When I'm in that Armory now, and you see all these kids there to work out or race, man, I've never seen so many white kids in Washington Heights. And it's fine with me, but what's not fine is that kids from this community and other New York City high schools, especially the public schools, are getting priced out, okay? Yes, they are. Don't shake your heads.
We get kicked out of the building when we're following our license. An argument could be made that the building at large is not following their license. They're not serving the community the way they were meant to be. We get kicked out? It's nonsense.
The Armory is your premier event space where cultures unite to stage endless possibilities.
They told me that in order for me to be inside a college prep class, I had to be active track. And I just find it kind of unfair. Like, why should only track youth be able to, utilize that college readiness? Because we have other kids that want to go to college. We have other kids that, need this SAT prep. Why we can't just make it available to the community?
And when GDS starts actually advocating for the space to be used as it's intended in its license, all of a sudden they get a notice of eviction. What's going on here?
We need to keep this safe space for the community and continue our services. So we need help. We can't let this happen to the youth and families in Washington Heights and Uptown.
I went to the Community Board 12 meeting along with 35 other people that came to support GDS. And when the Armory Foundation saw the overwhelming support from the community, they had to vote to extend the license as well. We were basically voting for no reason because DHS wasn't even there to listen to our concerns.
If GDS was not in the community and the elders, the families based in Washington Heights will be missing in such an important program.
Phil?
Ariel, is it okay for me to proceed with mine?
Yes,
All
absolutely.
yours, Phil.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, so that was my sound check. We're good there. Let me just, I have to share my screen. I'm getting on share screen. Okay, I had an error before, but it's now popping up.
Mhm.
And if you can let me know when you see my PowerPoint.
Yep, I see it. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just minimize a few things on my screen. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This presentation is the community use of the New York City Fort Washington Armory in Upper Manhattan, Washington Heights. And this is a December 2018 to December 2020 update. Hi, my name is Phil Zablocki of Advocates for Equality and Integrity. This presentation will be about 9 to 10 minutes or so. I was born and raised in Washington Heights on 166 between Audubon and Amsterdam. I was called upon by several community members back in 2014 to investigate allegations preventing community use of the Armory. I had appeared here at Housing and Human Services back in December of 2018, where I presented the findings of my investigation. Now I'm going to have a timeline of events in this 2-year update that I'm giving. So I'm starting with January 3rd of 2019, which was about a month after I last presented at Housing and Human Services. I had submitted 10 FOIL requests to DHS back in January of 2019. I was asking for all correspondence between and concerning DHS and the Army Foundation, SUNY Attain Lab, New Balance Store, the Track Cafe, Children's Aid Society, Police Athletic League, Columbia Center for Teaching and Learning, as well as 1199. And in May of 2019, DHS responded to those 8 requests that they basically couldn't find anything to meet those FOIL requests that I had submitted. The 9th request was for all correspondence between DHS and GDS. And on May 13th, they sent me 7 attachments, and it showed that DHS did receive emails and letters that GDS and I had sent them. And this is important because the overwhelming majority of our correspondences, emails, letters, never got any replies. So they basically showed proof that, yes, they did receive all the various correspondences that we had throughout the years. The 10th, bear with me one moment, I'm just dealing with some stuff on my screen here. Apologize. The 10th FOIL request was for all license agreements for all occupants, of the Armory. And in May of 2019, DHS sent me 6 attachments. The first was from November of 2007. It was a DHS letter to the Armory Foundation confirming that the Armory Foundation will continue to operate at the Armory as per their 2002 license agreement. And they included a copy of that agreement. They sent me from July 2002, the DHS and GDS license agreement. They sent from September 2012, an operational agreement between the Armory Foundation and SUNY. From June of 2003, they sent a license agreement between DHS and PAL. They sent from September 2017, a rental contract agreement between the Armory Foundation and Children's Aid Society, where Children's Aid Society had to pay $1,050 a month to the Armory Foundation. And the 6th item they sent was from December 2005, a license agreement between DHS and the Center for New Media Teaching and Learning from Columbia University. In January 2019's Housing Human Service Committee meeting, DHS did not show up to that meeting. The Armory Foundation made a presentation showing their current programs, and a resolution was passed to extend GDS's stay of eviction. In January 22 of 2019 at the CB12 general meeting, that's where Resolution G passed, 37-02-00, a resolution in support of issuing a stay of eviction of Growth and Development Services community-based organization occupying space at the Fort Washington Armory. Later on January 29th of 2019, CB12 sent a letter to Vincent Pulo of DHS, CCing all the various public officials with a copy of that passed resolution from the January 22 general meeting, and they were asking for a stay of eviction for GDS. The letter also mentioned that a group of community stakeholders, of which I was one, presented the Armory Foundation's license at the October 2018 general meeting, and it was to be put on CB12's calendar to review the overall governance. They also mentioned that CB12's Housing and Human Services began official review in committee on December 6th of 2018. And the findings of the CB12 Housing Human Services process can result in a possible future resolution, and it should be included in conversations related to governance, space allocation, and determinations made regarding the Fort Washington Armory and its occupants. On February 7th of 2019, at the Housing and Human Services meeting, and this is from the minutes, and you'll see everything that's in quotes is exactly from the minutes. The Fort Washington Armory Governance Part 2 was postponed, unfortunately. But there was mention that lack of use and misuse of space in the building and impact in the district, and Aisha spoke up to DHS and re-invited them. They declined. They prefer a meeting that is not in front of the public. March 7th of 2019, again at the Housing Human Services meeting, from the minutes, Matt Borden, Leilani Irvin, and Cindy Teta from DHS were present. The community is concerned with governance of the building, and many have advocated for addressing the issues for well over 6 years. The committee had 12 questions were submitted to DHS prior to the meeting, but not enough time for them to reply as their requests for questions came only days before. Matt Borden requested those questions be forwarded to him and Leilani Irvin. Matt Borden agreed that in the past, the licensing process was not transparent. He said, at present, the city only has direct licenses with GDS, the Army Foundation, PAL. And he stated the Army Foundation is allowed to lease the building. The chair, Aisha Ogilvy at that time, highlighted that this assertion ran contrary to statements by the Army Foundation in January that all other occupants in the building were licensees of DHS and not the Army Foundation. After several committee members stated their concerns, Matt Borden said he would look into it and reiterated he would like these issues written out. And he clarified that parks can use the space if it doesn't conflict with the foundation's activities. And the foundation did meet with the Parks Department. The clause of the Army Foundation license, which allows the foundation to hold space for track and other purposes, was read aloud, as well as rentals not being allowed by the license. Matt Borden said he was not aware of the article stating subleasing was not allowed. In the April 4th, 2019 Housing Human Service Committee meeting, Chair Aisha stated that since the last meeting, she submitted 23 questions to the Department of Homeland Services, and we have yet to be given answers. A motion to pass a resolution demanding DHS to comply with all FOIA requests and respond to all questions as soon as possible. That passed 6-0 from the committee and 12-0 from the public, with 5 abstained. Unfortunately, June 27, 2019, GDS was evicted from the Armory. Moving forward to October 3rd of 2019, I attended the Housing Human Service Committee meeting, and I had asked where did things stand with the Housing Human Service Committee following up on the governance of the Armory and the questions that were sent to DHS regarding the Armory. I was told that DHS still had not responded and that I should follow up with the CB12 chair, Richard Lewis, regarding this matter. So on October 7th, I emailed CB12 chair, Richard Lewis, and regarding what I was told at the Housing Human Service Committee meeting on 10/3/2019, and I never received any responses. On October 7th and November 27th of 2019, I emailed Matt Borden and Leilani Irvin of DHS asking about the status of the RFQs for GDS's former space at the Armory that they talked about at a previous Housing Human Services Committee meeting. I explained I Googled it over the past months. I looked everywhere. There was nothing to be found. I never received any responses from them. So going forth, what should be done? After reviewing numerous emails, news articles, FOIL documents, all the Housing Human Service meeting minutes, I found that there are still some following questions to be unanswered. First would be, what's the status of the Housing Human Services official review of the Fort Washington Armory governance as stated in CB12's letter to Vincent Pulo of DHS from January 29th, 2019. Second, Matt Borden of DHS said he would get to the bottom of it, quote unquote. And quote, DHS would re-examine how the Armory space is used and will implement a request for quotations, an RFQ, unquote. I asked, what has he and DHS done exactly? What happened to the RFQ that Matt Borden and DHS promised as per the meeting on March 7th, 2019? What happened to those 23 questions that were sent to DHS? And lastly, how are the various tenants at the Armory being held accountable for what's in their license agreement? I think that DHS should open up the Armory to the community as per the 2002 license agreement immediately. I feel that a committee should be created between all the entities currently using space in the Armory, along with community members and nonprofits, to discuss ideas and future plans for use of the Armory. And I volunteer to head that committee. I'd be happy to do that. And the committee that I just suggested, I think they should do a thorough walkthrough of the Armory, create a current utilization report, which I think would improve utilization of space at the Armory. And that's pretty much what I have. This is my contact information, my email address, cell phone. I'm on Facebook. Anyone please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to forward anything I have. I'm more than happy to help with anything going forward. And I just want to say a huge, big thank you to Housing and Human Services for allowing me this time to speak. I hope everyone is doing well. God bless you all and be safe during the holidays and New Year. And, thank you so much, very sincerely, for everything you've done for our community. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Phil. My name is I'm Growth and Development Services GDS Community Liaison and Program Coordinator. I'd like to take a moment to discuss how imperative GDS's programs are, especially in the midst of this pandemic that has drastically exacerbated inequalities that were already unacceptable. I had such a powerful experience working with the youth advocates who participated in our summer program and newest initiative, Leaders for Change. Leaders for Change has 4 major components: self-care, leadership, mentoring, and mental health. The mental health and emotional well-being is vital during this time, especially for vulnerable populations. So we really focused on this particular aspect. The mental health component is led by our founder and licensed clinical psychologist, Dr. Gary Altheim. This involves individual and group therapy sessions where youth really got to unpack their struggles and support each other in the process. And to continue offering social and emotional support, I'm one of GDS's mentors to some of the youth who participated in our program. For me personally, my experience at GDS has been extremely invigorating to watch youth who participated in Leaders for Change transform into more outspoken individuals who have the skills to effectively communicate their experiences, struggles, and ideas to provide solutions to issues in their community. And as one of our youth advocates, Jordania, stated, they are the ones who experience hardships firsthand, so who better to advocate for those issues? As someone who graduated with a degree in global public health and social work from NYU, I know that those who write policies that affect the daily lives of people in the country all too often lack the practice perspective. That direct interaction with clients is so important. Without it, psychological distance can take place. This psychological distance is just one thing that contributes to systemic inequalities and injustices that are present in our country. And this is why we at GDS are committed to empowering these youth to speak up, to give them tools to effectively communicate in a way that resonates with those in power, to recognize their own power as agents of change. Given the injustices that are present in the community of Washington Heights, specifically the aforementioned privatization of public spaces that are funded by community tax dollars, we are working diligently to ensure that the youth have the tools to be able to reclaim access to these essential resources. Now more than ever, equity needs to be at the forefront of everyone's concerns, and it certainly is for us. At a CB12 meeting on March 7th of 2019, Matt Borden, the Assistant Commissioner of Government Affairs and External Relations at the Department of Homeless Services, said DHS would re-examine how the Armory space is used and will implement a request for quotations. He also agreed that in the past, the licensing was not transparent and stated that he would look into the matter, and reiterated that he would like these issues to be written out. We have reached out on several occasions after those correspondences in 2019 and never received any response. Considering the impact of services that are offered at DHS, it is honestly egregious that we were promised a new space and that space was never delivered. Never mind GDS, false promises are misleading and frankly immoral when considering the youth that desperately need these services. Unfortunately though, this is representative of the neglect that they experience in so many other aspects of their lives. And in reality, although I mentioned Matt Borden, this is not one person's fault. This is systemic inequality and injustice, and it's a typical example of the history of this country. But with everyone beginning to wake up to these realities, you all have the chance to make noise about this. People don't have to be complicit in the system or conduct things business as usual as it has been in the past. It is becoming normalized to speak up against these issues. All we are asking for you is to take advantage of your position, to carry out the duties of your role, to assess community needs and address community concerns. And that means answering our questions about the RFQ we were promised and other issues. To use your voice and your power for those that don't have that privilege. If you're interested in volunteering or joining our calls, please visit excelgds.org, or you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at excelgds. And thank you guys for giving me the time to speak.
So thank you so much, everyone. I definitely, I appreciate when you come forward and you do these presentations, because of course we're not as involved, right, in these individual matters. And of course we understand that I understand this has been going on for years. When we last spoke about this, and I'll say this also for our fellow committee members that are joining us this year, we had a lot of questions. And we had understood that at that time, our previous chair was also reaching out at that point. Since even I've been in my own position, I have not heard anything at all regarding this matter from DHS, whether it be the Parks Department or perhaps the foundation, if for any reason they can provide that information. But that is, I have not heard from them. What I think is also just important is just that I also try to answer in some of the questions. I'll definitely have to look back. I saw you put together a good number. But at some point, yes, I do want to try and present, I think, a resolution that seeks to address many of the concerns you just brought up. I think specifically putting forward a committee that also addresses the usage of public space is definitely something that should be happening. I'm sorry, I don't want to take all of the space. Do any of my committee members have any questions or thoughts? Mariel, please feel free.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ariel, and thank you, Phil, Gary, and Zadie for your presentation. I also kind of grew up in the neighborhood, and I'll remember going to the Armory as a kid. So it's, disappointing to hear what has happened over the years in regards to public space. And so I just recognize that from a personal perspective, can understand what's going on. And what I wanted to do is just add on to Ariel's point is that if the committee does kind of take forward a resolution, a suggestion would be to make it quite broad, because I don't think this, we can highlight the Armory, but I think there are other places within our community that are quite similar as well in the lack of public spaces for community-based organizations such as GDS and many others are struggling to find places to continue to run their important, impactful programming in our community.
Absolutely. What I think I'll also just mention, if any other committee members have any. No? Okay. What I'll also just mention is just that I think that there was a previous discussion about there was supposed to be a siting at some point for other space that would be used by GDS. And I don't think I've necessarily heard anything about that. If someone else has perhaps been hearing more from the board, again, I think it's just, it's upon me at this point to just follow up with Ebenezer, because I think he would perhaps have heard from the city agencies, but at this point I have not. So I'll just say right now that, I will be following up with Ebenezer about this. And I'm sorry, Marshall, I saw you had your hand raised.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I apologize for being a little late. I remember being at some of these meetings, and I remember your prior presentations, Phil, and I am a little discouraged why this matter is still there like that. And I guess I even have more questions, because it seems that however these licenses fit, they found time to hold bar exams at the Armory. It's maybe at least 2. I know I was there. They had the early voting at the Armory. It seems that a lot of things are happening at this Armory, but they can't settle this issue. And that this coming to this meeting again is disturbing, and I think something needs to be done. I mean, they're doing what they want to do, certainly, and I'm not happy that this is here. There are other issues that we need to address, and not to not to dismiss or diminish this issue, but no, something's wrong. Something has to be done, and I would back a committee on this. And I yield the floor.
OC, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, I have actually a quick question to you. Do you think that there may be some information came to the office, but information that he did not receive wasn't forwarded to you about that?
I mean, I personally don't know. I mean, if that was the case, then of course I'm gonna, ask for that. But I mean, at this point, I haven't received anything about the armory, whether it be, from any of those agencies.
So I would think that since the office is busy with so many things, maybe it's best to just remind them or just ask even if it's every month, just to see where things are standing and if there is any additional information coming in that they should forward to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to be following up then with the folks after this meeting here. I'm sorry, did someone? Yeah, sorry, Dr. Gary, yes.
I have spoken to Ellie about this matter, and they have not received any information about anything. I spoke to him earlier last week. So I know he informed me that there's no update on his end about this, and I spoke to him. I also like to address your question about the public officials. A couple of the public officials assured us that we would not leave the Armory, that their intention, that was Mr. Robert Jackson and Mark Levine. Then we received a letter from 4 other public officials assuring us that our services are needed and that if we had to leave, that they would help make sure that we got another space because our mental health counseling service is needed. That was a letter from Espiat, Carmen de la Rosa, and Gail Brewer, and one other person that I'm drawing a blank on. But I sent you the letters, so there have been promises by public officials. And I really, it's such a complicated, confusing story, but I just think it's really very important for everyone to know that the New York City Fort Washington Armory was meant to be a community center. It isn't licensed. Where is the license from 1993 to 2002? Why did 1199 get the room that Jack Pfeiffer was sleeping in? Why did they get the room and they're not helping the community when the license says that all occupants of the building are supposed to be and servicing the community? So this is something that I've been battling since 2011. If you look back in the minutes, and I really it's very, very, very upsetting that the youth are getting shut out of the college readiness program unless you run track, and that Community Board 12 could be using the entire 2-acre empty building rather than spending money on a building that Columbia is why are you paying $200,000 to whatever, I don't know the amount, but this is so complicated, but it's very, very simple. There is nothing more deceptive than an obvious fact. You have a 2-acre city building that was meant to be run by New York City Parks in part when the Armory track is not being used. I was evicted, we were evicted because we were shining a light on this. Why were we evicted? So I'm really begging for the youth. I never wanted to be an activist. I never wanted to be this. I just can't turn my back on the fact that you have a resource that the Community Board 12 from October 20th, 2014, there was a resolution. That resolution was stonewalled. It was flushed under the rug by community board members. It was in 2014. I care about Community Board 12. There's so many great people here. And if Community Board 12 is not going to fight for equality, we are in big trouble. So 2014, the resolution disappeared. I spoke to Shah Ali. I spoke to George Fernandez. I met with them individually. I could never speak up in a negative way because if I did, I could be evicted. We're evicted. We're gone. Shah Ali would never deal with this. He is now an Armory Foundation Board of Director. He was the CB12 chair. New York, this is involved with every committee. The elders were kicked off the track because they were overcharged. New York City Parks are supposed to be running the building. Youth and Ed stonewalled this. Land use. I am suggesting that every committee, that we could do this presentation to the general meeting, because this is a resource that is for the community. Yes, you're right, Marshall. The Armory Foundation, we found the document, $150,000 for one day. One day they rent out to the bar exam. $150,000. We have the document. It's from the state controller's office. It's way too much information. It's so complicated. It's very simple. Mr. Zablocki has called for a roundtable discussion since 2014. The people that have been part of the corruption, and I say that word very carefully, okay, they should not be part of deciding what to do with the building. Haven Plaza was another issue. The Armory and the Columbia are connected. Haven Plaza was somehow that happened. Well, Sandra Harris now is also on the Armory Foundation Board of Directors. There's a lot of moving parts here, and you in this committee have a great job where you can actually start to turn the tide for Community Board 12. I believe in the community board. We need a community board. We need people over profit, not profit over people. And I hope and pray that you guys will help this. We need our services back. We have doing mental health counseling services. And how could we be shut down after 24 years? We have no place. We have a homeless.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But no. Sorry, Mr. Blocker. Yes.
Oh, no, I just wanted to let folks know that everything that Dr. Altheim was talking about, as well as everything in my presentation and what Zadie was talking about, we have documentation to back everything that's being said. And that's in today's day and age where there's a lot of emotions, a lot of things being said. You know, sometimes you may have folks that may not have those facts to prove, but we do. So I just wanted to reemphasize that to everybody here, that all the comments, things being said, there are emails, there are foiled documents, there are all kinds of things that that can back exactly what's being said. That's all. I appreciate you allowing me to add that in there. Thank you.
Absolutely. So let me just, if no committee members have any more comments or questions, I'm just gonna pull, I think, from our public members. Just give me one moment here. Oddly enough.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you want to come back to me later with a question, or can I ask it now?
Yeah, if you want, we can have you go before we switch to the questions and answers.
Okay. So, Ariel, it's more like a question to you. Maybe this issue needs to be on the agenda for as a follow-up or agenda item for all the meetings going forward, even if there is no update about that. At least it's on the agenda, and we'll have like a line item on the minutes saying what is the update, if any, and if there is none, that there is none. So this is another way for us as a community board to continue to track it, that we have like a track record that months after months and after months we're asking for updates or looking for updates, and there are none, or if there is something, we'll indicate what it is. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna let the public just mention their comments or questions, but what I was just thinking here is that I just like to try and pull up the resolutions, because we have others, you know, as Phil was just mentioning, that we've passed previously about this. And not to mention Phil, I think the committee members, you guys saw, he sent a lot of documents. You know, again, he's very much so keeping track and record of everything. So going in line with that, I want to just try and get one, a response from Ebenezer, but two, also to pull together all the facts that he's accumulated for us. And thank you again, Phil, to try and get that on a resolution. Essentially, really just pulling up much of that information specifically regarding the FOIA requests, but also just not having heard back, right? Because that's kind of the issue at this point. It's been I think they've said roughly about a year and a half that we haven't heard from them. But yeah, I'll just start reading off. Okay, so Maddie we'll get to the shelter right after this conversation.
Sorry.
I'm looking.
Sorry to interrupt. Just quickly, this is a logistical question. I have someone looking for the Facebook Live. Is it on CB12 Manhattan, Washington Heights, and Inwood page?
Oh, I don't think we've been setting up the Facebook Live. What we've been doing is we've been using a YouTube Community Board 12 channel.
Oh, okay. It just says live on Facebook in the top corner.
Facebook. Okay, I guess maybe then staff might be putting it on Chanel, are you there? Can you just confirm?
Yes, right now it's live on Facebook, but we'll upload it to YouTube later on.
Okay.
Because health and education is streaming on YouTube tonight.
Oh, okay, gotcha. And what's the page, just so Zadie knows?
It's Office NYC CB12. That's the Facebook page.
Thanks, Chanel.
No problem.
Okay. Sorry, Marshall. I do you want to just go? Because I'm trying to go through the public questions. Do you want to go right now or? Okay.
Yeah, just real quick though. I mean, I just want to voice that I am sympathetic to the idea that we have a retaliatory eviction here, and maybe we need to understand and flesh out that issue further. And I yield the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that's why I want to focus a little bit more time on trying to get a resolution on this. Yeah, I think it's just that there's a lot of information. Again, Phil, thank you, but I just want to try and get all that information because I think you guys have already seen. I try to really just do as much as possible with the facts I have with the resolutions, and so I just want to make sure that I can gather all of that. But yeah, let me just quickly switch back to these questions and answers just so I'm getting back. Theo, I don't know why you're asking about candidates running for city council. We're a community board. So I'm gonna leave that. Okay, yeah, no, this is not about city council race. Okay, so again, I if you have an issue, you want to present it in perhaps a new business, please do. But yeah, we're not discussing candidates running for city council. I just want to be very clear. That's not community board. And lastly, Maggie Velez. Okay. She wrote, "It's interesting. This sounds like how the Swindler Cove boathouse progress is going. It took a long time before they started to engage in more community programs for the community. There is a new blueprint that might not be the best interest for our community." I'm not sure what. Sorry, is this supposed to be under a new business item? Maggie, if you can switch to having your mic on, and Chanel, can you promote? Maggie, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, yes. Was this in reference to our current topic, the growth and development services presentation?
Well, it just sounded like it was similar to some of the items that have been brought up for the New York Restoration Program with the boathouse. And so this is the first time I've been on for Community Board 12 in some time. So it just sounded somewhat of how these new sites are being designated as community houses, and they're definitely not community houses or for the community. Sometimes, like with the boathouse that was opened behind PS5 by the highway a couple of years ago, many of the programs that were being run from that boathouse had nothing to do with the community. And so it took a couple of years before they started to invest in community programs that were for the kids. But they now have a new blueprint of what a new boathouse is going to look like. And it doesn't sound like it's going to be the best beneficial for the community youth in our district. So I was just, it was kind of similar, like in listening to everyone talk about this GDS. This was the first time I even heard about it. I was someone that actually questioned a lot of the programs that were being run from the Armory since it was renovated. And the amount of money that they wanted just to do like a workshop for the community within the school district was outrageous. And they were not willing to let us host anything there at a non-fee. So yes, it might not be in reference to what you brought up, but I think similarities as this community keeps growing, that a lot of these sites are not going to be for our community.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of one of the areas that we've been coming back to over time. I mean, even just our conversation, given this goes to parks, but they've also mentioned just everything that happened past 2 years with regards to La Marina. But yeah, I completely, yeah, I and can't say
That issue need to go to Parks and Cultural Affair Committee. That's not, this is not the committee to deal with the boathouse. So if I understand that you're trying to have like show a similarity, but if there is an issue with the boathouse, you should go to the Parks and Cultural Affair Committee. And I believe they're gonna meet next Tuesday.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if she's still on the call. Are you still on the call?
Yeah, she's still here.
Okay.
She was just raising that there's a relation to it in the same issues. Okay, and thank you so much, Maggie. I'll try to unmute. Sorry, Chanel, can you promote Theo so he can explain what he's referring to?
Hello. Yeah, hi, this is Theo. I was referring to the fact that I wasn't talking about the candidate, but actually the same request that was made in those documents about candidate running for city council, the community board needs to put in a resolution asking that nonprofit, huge nonprofit like the Armory Foundation, who receive public good in a space, in money, in grant, release all their document publicly so the community can look at where the money is going. Because DHS, HPD, NYCHA, all these city entity give their money to public, private, to nonprofit, such as the Armory Foundation, but the community have no idea where the money is going. Another example that is happening in the community are the HDFC that are going foreclosed because the sponsor, such as you have, Riceboro, and you name it, take the money, pay their employee, but we don't know where the money is going. The city gives money to those nonprofits and we don't know. So the question, the thing I put in the question, because there is no chat box, was linked to documents that were written by community member over the last 2 years, asking for entity like the foundation to release and show where the money is going, because places like Excel GDS is just the tip of the iceberg. Excel GDS is, at least Excel GDS has the guts to come out and call out the corruption. But there are thousands of nonprofits around our community that are being, either They're bad nonprofit. We don't know where the money goes, and they're still lingering around doing the political bidding of the politician. And there are good nonprofit like Excel GDS that is willing to put their book on the table, and they getting evicted. They get to disappear, and suddenly the community have no anything to go to. And mental health, and I will stop with this. Mental health, what drove me to Gary's program was what he did for mental health. And this is incredible that, I mean, no disrespect to the leadership, because all the things that has happened in the last year, but documentation has been given. The mayor knew about it and has done nothing, and nobody has done nothing. And even today, there is a new scandal coming out that the mayor knew that he gave public land in Brooklyn, and meanwhile he denied it. That came in the New York Daily News today. So this is not new, and I would welcome if CB12 were to take the leadership for the whole city of New York to go after the corruption. CB9 dealt with the corruption with the NYPD in the 90s. CB12 has the opportunity to be the leadership in anti-corruption bullshit discovery throughout New York City. So please take the moment to do that. Thanks a lot for your time, and good luck.
So I just have a quick question for Phil, actually, because maybe I've misunderstood these past few years. For nonprofits, are they not required to open up their books when they're, perhaps saying that they're let's just say they're making a claim that they're going to be spending $200,000 on books for children? Let's just say something like that. Are they not having to claim that at this moment?
I can't answer that with certainty, to be honest.
Can I answer that very quickly?
Well, go for it.
The answer is no. The only thing they're required to do is publish a N99 with the IRS, which is just the summary of where the money goes. But when you want to get into the accounting goes from, uses one of those accounting firms that they need to be verified by the accounting firm, but nothing is public. So you cannot get an idea of where the money goes around. And one example is, I'm going to use another nonprofit which I'm fighting against, which is UHAB. UHAB has created more entity of nonprofit and private public partnership, and we don't even know where the money is. So they're moving money around, and all we have to go by is the IRS 990, but we need to get the full accounting book where they spend money, basically. And that's what the thing, that's something that is something for the candidate for city council to take over. But that's why he linked. I didn't mean that CD12 should meddle in the candidacy, but look at what the community is asking from their candidate. CB12 could be asking the same from the elected official.
Okay, gotcha. And sorry, Aisha, I know you had your hand raised.
Yes, and I'm actually going to come up here for a second. So first of all, I want to apologize to the members of my committee, as well as to the public for being late. I received a grant last year in 2019 from Amazon as a We Power Tech grant recipient for technology. I learned just recently that I was selected. I applied for the 2021 season because of the COVID situation. They were not holding the normal conference that they would, that I went to for 8 days last year because of the pandemic. But I applied for 2021 and learned that they turned what would have been an 8-day program into a year program, and I was selected. So in effect, I'm the 2019, 2020, and the 2021 award recipient for that program through Amazon for technology. So that is actually in full swing. Thank you very much. That's in full swing right now. And so I had competing interests. I'm sorry that I didn't email earlier to say that I would be late. But that's the reason for my lateness. And it's a lateness that I would not have chosen, specifically because this is a major issue for me. There are new members on this board who I'm pretty sure are not intimately aware of the background of this. and there are some people who have some ideas, but likely do not know the fullness of how this has, you know what, maybe the camera is not a good idea because it's not staying in place. Anyway, so the reason why I wanted to speak is, so I'm the former chair of Housing and Human Services for this committee, the Housing and Human Services Committee, on which I served for multiple years. I was also the chair of Information Technology and Telecommunications for this board. And in that position, there were major technology advancements that I was establishing for this board to change the way that we function in many ways. So much so that I got a grant from Microsoft in order, compensation waived, in order to completely change specifically the way that we deal with the housing and the buildings in our district, to be able to have, be more in touch with the data, to be more in touch with the stakeholders, to be more in touch with the tenant organizations and the organizations which support those within our district. I would love to go into more detail. It would take more time to do so, but it's my feeling that that could definitely have been a safety net for people, especially now during, we didn't know the pandemic was going to happen, but it could certainly have helped people. It could definitely have helped people dealing with evictions. There's just so many ways, but those efforts became a casualty to the fact that I picked up this fight about the Armory. So Theo is very right. CB12 has the opportunity to stand in the gap for our community, for our city, to address corruption. But the real truth is that they already had that opportunity. CB12 became a part of that corruption. CB12 allowed me to be targeted in my position because they wanted me to stand down off of this issue. Rest in peace to Richard Lewis. Richard Lewis, for many years on this board, was a mentor to me. He was the Housing and Human Services chair before I became chair. I learned a lot from him. It's my feeling that as this issue was developing, he took a position against me because of my diligence in fighting against the corruption regarding the Armory position. But it is also my feeling that the members of this board failed Richard Lewis. I've thought about this for a long time because we all have a responsibility to each other. And I know in my heart that in years prior, I don't think that I would have received that kind of energy from Richard Lewis. And there are other ways in which that may have manifested. And that I feel like the other members who took part in that have also failed him and attempted to blame others for the way in which it may have impacted him. And I'm not going to go into more detail where that is concerned. However, I held meetings with DHS. I've worked with some of the people who are in this room right now, Phil Zablocki, Gary Altheim, other community members, all who came together, did the foils. I'm not sure how much I missed and how much you've been informed about. I taught them how to do the foils in order to get access to the information because I realized that they were definitely hitting on something. I live on the perimeter of that building. I saw with my own eyes how underutilized that building was in a community that has dire needs for all people, but especially for our youth, where our youth are constantly criticized. Why do we not have the outcomes that we would want for our youth? And yet we have a resource 2 acres big that sits mostly empty. And I don't really care who decided that that was an okay thing. Clearly it's not okay. Even if it were decided that that is how that it should function, there was a problem that many people in the community had with that. But in fact, the contract of that building did not allow them to do so. And so I picked that up as Chair of Housing and Human Services, learning that the building is run under Department of Homeless Services, which is the purview of this committee. And the amount of pushback that I've received has disheartened me about this board and its members, because the disrespect, the targeting, the undermining of my dedication for 8 years that has taken place here, the disrespect, I don't even have the wherewithal. And had I completely focused, had I thrown my whole heart into the matter to address it the way that it has, which is still in my mind to do, I would not, for instance, be the award recipient for Amazon for 2020 and 2019. I still have a life. I still have family. My grandfather just passed. But I have had to hold on my back simultaneously this, instead of pushing forward for progress, people have chosen to hold up the corruption as what they would like to see pushed forward. And that is something that I have urged this committee to reverse for some time now. The borough president reviewed some of the dynamics that were going on. We have an inclusion resolution that still stands unaddressed in some ways, which women were shown to be targeted in this board. There was a statement that there's gender discrimination. I was named in that letter. I'm the only one that was never returned to any of her positions. I'm the only one who, the issue, I provided documentation to show that the ways in which they attempted to remove me in my position were not even valid. And it is not of any consequence to some of the people that have been on the executive leadership of this board, which is another reason why it's disheartening that the executive leadership is continuing as it is, pretty much with just minor changes to who is in leadership. We have a major problem on Community Board 12 of Manhattan. And I'm glad that we're having this meeting, because it is definitely time for that to be addressed. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Aisha. What I'll just mention before we come back, and I should also just mention, Aisha, we were discussing trying to pull together the past resolutions and the past documents that have been shared by Gary and Phil, and trying to get a resolution, but also following up now with Ebenezer. What I just want to mention is just, you know, I spoke with Gary, and I take this personally, to not see services being really delivered to the youth, specifically in such a capacity as mental health. This has been quite upsetting to I think just many individuals, but more so than ever, I cannot just go on without mentioning the individuals that have come forward over the years, the youth. I mean, it's remarkable how Gary has clearly had an impact on these young individuals who very clearly just make it obvious that they've definitely benefited from these services. And I realize that again, you know, this also means an opportunity that's lost for those individuals that are seeking out those services. So again, I thank you all for your continued advocacy. I realize this has also been a tough journey, but I do want to make sure that we're getting back to this. And so that's why I want to make sure that by come next meeting, we can hopefully pull together that information that you've presented to us. Again, thank you, Phil. And we'll hopefully be able to get a resolution and also a follow-up going on with DHS. Yeah, and thank you again. So oh, sorry, yes, Phil.
I just thank you for your kind words, and Aisha, you are phenomenal. No, I just want to say that, and Dr. Gary touched upon how complicated this can be. the recent documents that I forwarded from the foils I had in my presentation. There is also documentation that goes back to the presentation that was done in December 2018. And I just want to say that if you don't happen to have any of that, or you're looking for stuff going back, please feel free to reach out. I didn't want to overload you folks with stuff, so I just forwarded what was recent. But yeah, if you have questions going back, please reach out, and I'll be happy to forward what we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Yes, Gary?
I'm grateful that the committee gave us this platform. So I just want to state for GDS, for the record, is that GDS was left out of the letter by Jocelyn Carter. Jocelyn Carter wrote a letter in January to the community board, and it's really it hurts me, because we know with social injustice that history can change. GDS was left out of that letter. There is no record of growth and development services in GDS providing mental health counseling for free, and all the other great work that all the volunteers doing. This is not about me. This is about hundreds and thousands of people that have been part of this volunteer effort to help the youth. So I am requesting that someone from Community Board 12 write back to Jocelyn Carter and tell her to edit that letter and get her to add the fact that Growth and Development Services was built out raw space in that building in 2002 from rubble, and offering free services from 2002 to 2019, and not to omit our organization from that. And the last question I would like to know is, what has happened to our space? I have 24 years of belongings and pictures and everything and computers in a basement and a storage. That what happened to our space? It's a very concrete question. I want to know. I know that the Armory Foundation is building out other spaces, and it's in their newsletter. So this is just very, very upsetting, because we were evicted and we have no home, and we were providing services for the community. There's a separation between the Armory Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that can be evicted in 10 days. You can take back this building for the community. Forget about GDS, okay? You could take back this building for the community. Every committee could be in a room in the Armory. You could stop paying whatever you're paying to the Columbia for your community board office, and you could have a community center. That is what you could have as per the license in 1993. So I don't understand how it could be that this resource for our youth is not being used.
Can I ask Gary, was Maury mentioned here?
No, I haven't mentioned Maury, but I did tell Ariel about that. You feel free to tell. I mean, you.
So, what's Maury's last name, Gary?
Maury Ayora.
Maury
and Priscilla.
I had the opportunity to work with two of the youth that went through Gary's program, to sit with them, to talk with them, to hear from them the impact that Gary and the GDS program had on their life and on the lives of their families. The program that Gary ran out of the Armory is not your average program. And interestingly enough, they used that against him ultimately in removing him from the Armory. But he's not just ticking off numbers as far as people receiving services. He's pretty much almost like a 24-hour operation available for those students that come through his doors. Maury Ayora passed away recently. He considered GDS to be a home away from home for many years. Gary Alltime was a person that he can go to for supports throughout his life. And I want to handle this delicately for him and the family, but it is definitely my feeling that the GDS being removed from the Armory was a removal of a major support system for him. the fact that that building allowed, for instance, one of the rooms to be used as a queen size bedroom for 7 years. I did a moderate estimate of the amount of hours lost to the community. It's 36,000 hours of service hours that could have been providing a youth service, a senior program, an arts program, et cetera, things that we fight for in our budget requests on an annual basis to get funding for these things. And yet there was a space in a city-owned building charged to be a community space where a man was allowed to sleep on a queen-size bedroom when he flies in from California in order to support the Armory Foundation. It's time that this is having real life consequences for the people in our community. I seriously ask for this committee to finally step in the gap for the history of what has gone on in relation to the building and also within this board to suppress what's happening at the Armory Foundation.
Thank you, Aisha. So again, I'll be trying to get together that, collection of just the whereases pertaining with the information that we've now collected from Phil, following up with Ebenezer. So just, please do expect that I'll be trying to get together some language. Thankfully, I am now going to be on a wonderful grad school break for this coming month, so I'll have a little bit more time. But again, thank you all so much. I think with that, again, expect this is not the end. There'll be follow-up that I'm promising you all. That is now being recorded. You have my word. So for the next section, I just want to note for folks who might have, I guess, caught on after I had mentioned the note about the potential Inwood DHS shelter. We had originally gotten a request, and I think Danielle's still on, from her to talk about getting a resolution on the shelter. I think that just because we haven't heard as much information, there's not necessarily something that we can essentially potentially build a solid resolution about that siting. As far as I understand, I'll just note I have only fairly recently found out it's supposed to be next to, I believe they said PS 98. The Manny, who was just on and messaging us earlier, he wanted to discuss, I think, his concerns about that. But I think it's just generally stemming from the concern of it being very close to a school. It's supposed to be sited, I think they said, roughly on 10th Avenue. And if I'm, and again, I'll have to clarify the exact site with Ebenezer when he gets back from break or his vacation, but I think it's supposed to be roughly on the corner of 212th Street. So, I don't have as much information, and again, I want to try and make sure that if there's anything being done on my end to try and pass a resolution regarding this matter, of course, I want to get as much information as possible. With that, I'll turn this, I think, to Aisha. You have your hand up, or is that still from?
Speak, Ariel.
Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't lower it. I'll lower it now.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, Danielle, did you want to mention?
Yeah, no, thanks for inviting me, and apologies for any confusion. So I guess the first thing I'll say is I'm not necessarily suggesting that we I'm not suggesting by any means that we build a shelter, and I'm not speaking on behalf of any group. I just heard a few meetings ago Ebenezer talk about this plan to build this plan that DHS had to build a shelter in the neighborhood, and I just sort of put it in the back of my mind. But I personally work in the jail system and work specifically with people that are sick and elderly. And again, I'm not here representing any organization, but I know that folks in the community have concerns about shelters, and specifically men's shelters. That was a concern that was mentioned, I think, at the meeting when Ebenezer brought up the shelter. So one idea that I had was to potentially have it be a medical shelter, because I know that there is a need for that. And currently DHS doesn't have any medical shelters. So I guess I totally agree with what you said. I think it would be great to first get some additional information on the project and where it's at. And my suggestion for a medical shelter was just sort of an idea if it is going to move forward, but not necessarily me advocating for a shelter. Just wanted to, and sorry for any confusion. So yeah, I guess however you want to proceed is cool with me, but I think it'd be great to get some additional information on the project.
Yeah, I'm a little bit lost as to what will be the case. I did want to note, because I know we just had a resolution pertaining to the homelessness situation. I wanted to note there is information regarding shelter maps from City Council. I'm not sure if anyone has seen this before, but I actually did want to try and pull it up and just share it with you all, just so that folks know what the situation looks like here in CB12. Just give me one moment.
Somebody asked a question about medical shelter for mental illness. So again, I'm not representing anybody. I'm not an expert on any of this, but it's my understanding that there are specific MICA shelters, shelters for folks with mental illness. So this would be more for people with complicated medical issues like dialysis or cancer or elderly, things of that nature.
Okay, so I'm going to start just showing you. This is a mapping. There we go. Just laying out what the situation looks like across New York City in regards to the shelter populations. What you'll see, I mean, in terms of Manhattan, we're certainly not as highly populated by shelter, by the shelter population. But what you see is there's a trend between Upper Manhattan, pretty much, right? When we're talking about Upper West Side, who's kind of been in the middle of the controversies right now, trying to ensure that those individuals who specifically have been cited as being predominantly men with various disabilities or illnesses, their shelter rate is going to be lower than that of Northern Manhattan, specifically in CD12. We're talking about 770 shelter entries on an average, and there's 4. So we're definitely, dealing with a different kind of capacity issue, whereas many other areas might be looking different. And of course, it varies, right? So this is from their city council homelessness. I think they claim themselves to be homelessness data shelter team, but I just wanted to make sure that folks knew. I think the previous concerns that have been raised about when we're, again, getting cited is that, quite frankly, we're a little bit cautious as to how many individuals are specifically coming to our district. Is this fairly essentially being spread out, right? And I think that there's a bit of concern because, again, if we're talking about getting large influxes that go beyond what we're even looking at right now, we're already seeing, again, more than double that of some other communities. I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit concerned about this. So how do we really aid these individuals if they are supposed to be coming to a shelter? That's just my thoughts right now. But again, I want to get more information because we're kind of lacking in that regard right now. So I will stop sharing.
Can you mouse over our district again?
Yeah.
I just want to see what the numbers were specifically.
So this is just the averages right now.
770.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what are the sizes? Like the recent shelter that was added on Audubon, what was the capacity of that? Because I just want to point out that the more shelters that we add, we're becoming very near becoming one of the darker spots on the map. We're already at 770. So
Yeah, I'm personally not aware of it, and again, this is partly the matter where it comes to shelters. A lot of times, there's not going to be that kind of specific information, and I personally wish there was, just from the data point. But yeah, I mean, we can probably ask the folks that are running that shelter site. But it is a good point. I mean, I know that had been raised as to how many individuals are being brought to the shelter sites. And again, it just looks like if there's 4 shelters and there's 770 people on average, when we're talking about districts that have 7 shelter sites and there's only less than half.
wow.
I'm just concerned again about how that affects these families or individuals that are coming to seek services. So yeah, of course, again, I just want to get more information before I feel like we're even ready to try and weigh in on this matter.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I definitely appreciate that. I think that when I emailed, it was sort of just with the hopes of getting more information about this project, and then just adding my 2 cents about the medical shelter as just an idea, if it is definitely going to be built, but again, not advocating for it one way or the other. I think if it's the feeling of the committee or the board to not install a shelter or build another shelter, that makes sense to me.
Did anyone else from the committee also have thoughts? I think we were getting a few comments, if not from the public. So yeah, and Maggie, sorry, this is just to answer your question. Was the homeless services plan to construct a new mentally ill men's homeless shelter tabled? I mean, we're just having the conversation about what we've heard. We haven't heard really too much more. Yes, and I'm seeing your comments. It's close to PS 98, corner of the school. And yeah,
Can we get information about just looking at the number in regards to the capacity and the amount of shelters? Can we get data about how full our shelters are in comparison to other districts? So why are we looking at 327 people across 7 shelters in the downtown area while we're looking at a much smaller amount of shelters but way more people? Can we dig into that?
In terms of data, I mean, I can definitely try and look. I think and this is kind of just the issue with the data, but it's just I'm not sure that there's kind of a greater deal of information about each one, and that's kind of the issue that I I wish there was more information. Of course, it would be more helpful for this conversation, especially now. But I can definitely try and look into see if there's anything more available. And Maggie, did you perhaps maybe just want to weigh in? I think you can switch to unmute if so.
Well, I was hoping that parents from the school would have been on this Zoom with CB12, but I'm not sure who's on. But how much of this conversation has been had with the community, the school community, if that's indeed how we're going to proceed with is building this right next to that school, and that's an elementary school.
Yeah, your guess honestly is as good as mine. We have not heard much, and earlier today I had the day off. I was trying to look as much into this and just Googling, trying to check articles, but no, I have not seen any information. I mean, I think right now is where we stand as just community board members. We've heard via a district manager's report, but there's supposed to be more information that they're supposed to be sending after what was that meeting? I think it might have been September or so. But yeah, there's not really any information that we've we've gathered. So yeah, I think quite frankly, this would also be one of the other topics that maybe might be best to try and come back to maybe next month if we have more information. But yeah, I didn't want to just make it seem as if you can't discuss this because of course I understand there's a lot of concern about this.
So you're saying this was presented in September's meeting for the first time about this shelter?
Sometime around there. Danielle, do you remember when it was?
I don't even think there was a presentation. It was just, it was something that Ebenezer mentioned, I think, like you said, in one of his reports. And it was sort of a shock to me because I didn't remember there ever being a presentation to any of the committees.
You're right, Danielle. There was never a presentation about that. We just mentioned it as a by the way.
Yeah.
It's not clear why information is not trickling down to the committees, but
yeah, it's surprising that DHS didn't present on this at all and that Ebenezer just sort of mentioned it casually. And so that's why I decided to reach out to you about this idea for a medical shelter, because I thought if it was something that was going to happen for sure, perhaps the community might be more amenable to something like a medical shelter. But yeah, I think it'd be really great if DHS would come and talk about this plan and talk about, the status and all of that.
So I think part of the issue is this board lacks true processes. In this age of 2020, the way that we function is extremely outdated. So the potential for things to come to the board that should be addressed under specific purviews, but that never happens is great. It's something that I experienced as chair of Housing and Human Services, where things would just completely fall through the cracks. It's something that I was attempting to address in the use case that I got accepted by Microsoft, to look at our processes, to automate them so that there would be no dropping the ball as best as possible. But that's something that also fell to the wayside underneath the burden of the Armory fight. So, but I think that definitely needs to change. There needs to be, for instance, a tracking system in the office.
So I think, and again, I'll try and get more information. Hopefully, if anything, we just had a meeting with Youth and Education, but it might just be helpful to try and maybe get their perspective as well. And perhaps see if maybe Faye might know whether it be one of the executive directors or principals for PS98 there. Perhaps they might be able to speak a little bit more to what they've at least heard. But yeah, I think maybe we can revisit this in the coming month when we have a little bit more information. And I'm sorry, Chanel, would you mind elevating Curtis? I think he might be in an attendee moment.
also, Ariel, I'm sorry, I think you should check with Wayne. Maybe he got some information about that.
Oh, did he mention anything recently?
He actually, I'm not sure. He didn't mention anything to me, but I thought there was a discussion in one of the executive committee meetings about that.
Okay. So yeah, I'll check in with Wayne. Curtis, are you there? I saw that you put a comment before, but I just wanted to see if maybe you had any thoughts on this, or perhaps if you've heard anything from your committee.
On the DHS shelter, I have not heard anything on the committee, but I agree with Aisha that oftentimes things come to the office and they don't make their way down to the committees. So I don't know anything about it. I do recall it being mentioned by Ebenezer, but it was just one sentence saying this was a possibility, but there was never a presentation on it. So that's that. I did post a comment earlier, just standing in solidarity with Gary. Now is a time that we do need more access to community spaces, particularly for youth programming in this crisis that we're living in, double pandemic with inequities across the country and most certainly in our community. So I do think it's time to get answers as to what's going on with the Armory what the current usage of the armory is, and to answer some of the other questions that Gary and Aisha posed about this facility. So that was one reason I heard parts of the presentation, but I wanted to chime in just to add that little piece of information as well. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so if there's not any additional, and I think I've gone to everybody at least.
And thank you, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to discuss this. So I'll just mention under 2 new items that I put for new business. Let me just switch back over. Okay. Great. So I spoke with Regina Tyler from Community Options. She recently got in touch with me and she actually confirmed that she's going to be able to essentially present on behalf of her organization at our coming meeting in January. So we'll be able to get a little bit more information as to what the organization is doing, kind of just asking them about how they've been operating so far. What I should just mention is that, and I'll of course explain this as well with Janet, who was asking originally about this. They're unfortunately just not at liberty to really dive into the legal, I guess, claim or lawsuit that is going on right now. I mean, that's just, it comes down to their own attorneys, their national organization. And so, Regina has just expressed this. She is more than happy again to just really relay what information she can about the organization, talk about the services, what they're doing. So, I hope this, at least it adds some information. It helps us better understand the role that they're taking on in the community. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that they're going to be essentially diving into any legal matter regarding the organization. So yeah, you can expect them as well for our January meeting. Did anyone have any questions, thoughts on the matter? If not, I'm happy to move on. Okay. And then lastly, so Martin Collins, he actually reached out. He wanted us to actually just know that for 26 Sherman Avenue, there's a link that was also attached in the previous email sent over. It was from the Department of Buildings website, and it was just letting us know that they're actually supposed to be doing some construction now. I think it's within, right? Given the link that he sent over, for them to start building essentially a new residential property. So that, that's just something I guess I'll have to look a little bit more into. Given the application that at least I saw from the link, it doesn't seem too extraordinary. Again, it's within right. So yeah, I'm hoping to just find out a little bit more about the property. And I think that is everything on new business for my end. Curtis, yes.
Okay, sorry, I raised my head again. You were speaking about new business. So yesterday at our public service, what's my committee called? Safety committee. We discussed our future agenda items and priorities for 2021. And one of the things we discussed having was a public meeting on what it means to reimagine public safety or redefine public safety. And so much of that conversation about what it means to redefine public safety involves decriminalization of homelessness, mental illnesses, of housing for reentry, people reentering their communities after being incarcerated. So I do see that there is a way to liaise maybe with the housing committee, and we're just now starting that conversation. But in my mind, it would be a conversation, a panel discussion that would happen, January, maybe February, depending on how we plan. And we would have panelists to talk about different components of reimagining public safety. Maybe there's an expert on how housing contributes to this issue. Maybe there's an expert on mental health, and there's a variety of different people speaking on the issue. So I wanted to share that with you because I think that your committee would be a great thought partner with organizing that, and you'll be a great partner to work with as we think about what that means as a public meeting, not a hearing, because that has to go through the whole process, but it's a public meeting just to present information to the community on and maybe come up with something afterwards to help usher move the conversation along on what it means as a community to redefine public safety on our own terms.
Absolutely. Thank you for the compliments, by the way. But no, there is a great deal of information. In my nerdiness, I've been reading Evicted by Matthew Desmond. He definitely hits upon a few issues there. So yeah, I would definitely love to try and engage a little bit more in that conversation. And thank you for the invitation.
Cool, thank you.
So I think that should be everyone, unless you have any additional new business or an update. If not, I am in anticipation of the holidays going to say I wish you all well. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your time with your families, or your smart devices. But thank you again so much, and yeah, I guess I'll see you all at the general meeting. Take care.
Bye.
And with that, let me just make the call to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, OC.
Second.
Thank you, Aisha.
Third.
All
Have
right.
a good night, everybody.
Have a good night. Take care.
Bye. Good night.
Good evening.